So, what happens when you grow up between cultures, between languages, and between expectations? I have psychologist, professor, and author Christine Ma-Kellams with me because she has spent her life navigating borders, geographical, cultural, emotional, and she's poured that experience into her writing. So, today we're diving into her journey, discussing her debut novel, The Band, the power of story, and living authentically. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
So I am extra excited because we were actually roommates in college and we hadn't talked in a
Mhm.
long time. And I was just surprised that you had written a book, you were going to Comic-Con, so we got to have dinner together, catch up, and now I get to talk to you in this way. So super, super excited. But for those that may not know you yet, can you share a bit about yourself and your journey to how you came to where you are?
Yeah, so by day, I am a social psychologist and college professor at San Jose State. My background specializes in like cross-cultural psychology, so specifically like the secret emotional lives of Asians versus European Americans. But the thing I love most, the thing I do on the side, is novel writing. So my debut novel, The Band, came out this past year from Atria and essentially follows a canceled K-pop star who flees to America to escape his problems, mental health and career and otherwise, when he meets an Asian American psychologist at a local H Mart, and their relationship essentially spirals by producing many more crises than he sort of foresaw. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that because you have a long list of like academic achievements, but when I was looking at your bio, you said your stories are your greatest work, right? So what
Yeah.
does fiction or writing allow you to express that perhaps, your teaching, your research, your academia might not?
Yeah, so when I think about like my own college, when I think about our days back in Berkeley, which I loved, and I'm sure you did too. Like I can't remember theories that I learned in class, but I
Mhm.
do remember the stories my professors tell, and I think like as a faculty, like an academic myself, I know something magical happens like right after students finish exams, right? That they essentially forget pretty much everything you've ever taught them, but they might remember the one or two stories you told that really stood out. So I feel like ultimately, through the course of human history, stories are the things that essentially propel us forward and that like teach us lessons, make us remember, open our eyes to new things, more so than any sort of philosophical idea or even empirical study. Even though there's a lot of like empirical studies in my novels, like I don't think those are necessarily the bread and butter of what drives us and what explains ourselves to us. So that's why I love storytelling more than I love pretty much anything else.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love stories too. This whole like book world reopened back
Mhm.
up to me because I was reading a lot of nonfiction
Yes.
in my adult years.
Yeah.
Like when I was a kid, I had all the like fiction and loved it, and then went to the I'm supposed to read more nonfiction or
Mhm.
whatever it was. But I think it was a year and a half ago. My coworker said, "Hey, you want to read this nonfiction book?" And I went, "Okay, it's a romantasy. Sure, why don't I try it?" And then I'm just like back into fiction full swing.
Yes, right?
Yeah, and you're right. It is the stories that are impacting. Yes, it's fiction, but there are so many things that are so powerful out of it for our own lives, and I love it. I love books.
Oh, I'm so glad you make the dive back into fiction because I agree. Like I think I know a lot of grown-ups who primarily read because they feel like they need to like better themselves in one way or another or like learn about the world because that's the responsible adulting thing to do. But I'm like, all that is good. I love nonfiction too. I don't read it that much, but like in theory, I love it. But yeah, I think fiction is just like your number, like our primary joy, and especially like now more than ever with like the expanding social media world where there's many other forms of storytelling. I still feel like books are the original fiction, right? Like even with however big like social media gets or like non-cape streaming gets, like I feel like the source material is ultimately still books, which is why
Yeah.
I love
And
it.
I think even in the nonfiction, I love biographies and autobiographies, which are again stories.
Yes.
And you learn so much from all these things and you take it into your own life. So I love it. Now, if we talk about your novel, The Band, it's such a
Mhm.
unique story that I don't think I really have encountered, or maybe because I'm not like heavy into K-pop or, the Asian pop scene. Maybe there are a ton of out there. I'm just not exposed to it, but I felt like it was a really unique um, angle and kind of thought. So, can you tell us where the idea came from and what kind of inspired you to put it together?
Yeah, so I mean, the idea is it's not too mind blowing. It's just it came to me when I discovered K-pop myself. So like deep into the pandemic, when I discovered like BTS, thanks to ironically like NPR and SNL and like the James Corden show. So very like mainstream things. I was like, wow, it reminded me. I don't know what you were obsessed with in high school, but when I was in high school and like middle school, I was like obsessed with boy bands.
In
So
sync,
like,
Backstreet Boys. Yeah.
Boys, like 90 Degrees, all that jazz.
Uh-huh,
So like
uh-huh.
when I saw BTS, I was like, oh, I thought to myself, it's like that. Like it's like me in high school, me in middle school. And then I saw them perform, and then I watched a few of their clips, and I was like, oh, just kidding. This is like a whole new universe. And not just because they're Korean, but because I think their fandom is also super unique. Like the fandom I see in the K-pop realm feels really distinct than the fandom I was part of, like when I was like a teen, right? Like they're way more intentional. I think they're also more intense, but they're intense with like a very, I don't know, like with a almost ideological angle. The way they are dedicated to not only the music, but dedicated to like the messaging and what these like musicians represent. So I just thought it was super interesting to pursue that. And you're absolutely right. I know, especially since writing the book, I've met a number of people who write about K-pop in like the YA
Mm.
realm, like specifically geared towards like teenage audiences. I know of almost no one who writes about it in the adult realm, particularly in like the literary realm, right? So a lot of the writing that does go on about K-pop is very like geared towards younger people and towards like a very commercial younger person bent, which I think is very much in line with the like the historical stereotype that people who follow boy bands are like teeny boppers, right? But like I discovered K-pop as an adult,
Mhm.
as like a mother of two. So I was like, wait. I think adults would love K-pop too. And even if you don't care about the music, I think that world
Yeah.
of like intense scrutiny, like, but also intense worship and
Mhm.
fandom, I think is super interesting and really ripe. And I think it's also fun to sort of explore all that within the cross cultural lens that K-pop forces you to use, right? Because it's a story about a Korean American or a Korean idol who comes to America, who meets other Asian Americans not from the same cultural background, and then who obviously grapples with the cultural differences between like the US and like Seoul or South Korea. So all that I thought made for an interesting angle to tell a story.
Yeah. And I think it brings a different understanding for people, especially that are not immersed with it and did their studies on K-pops and stuff, right? Because I have friends, also adults, that are big BTS fans. And
Yeah.
they've told me about like, oh, do you know these Korean stars? Like they all live together and they're not allowed to have these like different, like relationships are kept hush hush or, all these things,
Yes.
which are not true of stars here, right? Or
Yep.
boy bands here and all
Mhm.
these things. Um, so I don't know all the details or like, what
Yeah.
really happens behind the
Mhm.
scenes and stuff, but you do give a glimpse into what does it potentially look like for people that are in this, that are chosen from a young age, and you have to
Mhm.
live that life, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I have very mixed feelings about it because on the one hand, I do appreciate like having watched K-pop performances and then watch like I because I love American like and international music as well, like Western music. I'm just like, wow, you can really tell that they take their job way more seriously. Like you watch a K-pop performance and then you watch like an American and like not to bag on any like American artist, but I'm like in K-pop, the choreography is so insane that you're like, these are essentially Olympians on stage
Yeah.
who happen also to sing. Because the level of just like physicality and athleticism that their like choreography requires is mind blowing, right? And at the same time, they are singing, like full
Yeah.
on singing. So I don't even know how that happens. And then you watch American musicians, whom I also love, but who mostly prance around on a stage, right? Or like stay still and sort of like move around and sway. Like they might be moving around, but they're not doing the level of like intense, like months of training choreography that I think every K-pop performer does when they go on stage. So like just that alone makes you realize, oh, to make that system work, where you have that level of just physicality and practice and drive to even make that system possible, like you can't take it as casually as like American artists take their job. Not to say that American artists don't like struggle and spend hours upon hours, like they do that too. But I think the world of K-pop really does take it to a whole nother level. And I think obviously the cultural side of, being a highly collectivistic society,
Mhm.
that's really modernized a lot, but in a very short period of time, I think means they also have many more traditional values that even other Asian countries may not hold as much. And so as a result, the intense like social pressure to like save face, to maintain this like very idealistic image that people can respect and also look up to. I think that is also really one of a kind. I don't know if you can see that anywhere else in the world, quite frankly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So many things. Like, so many things rolling through my mind,
Yeah.
but it is crazy. It is crazy, but, the whole globalization of things helps you
Mhm.
see a lot more of this, and we get all the news and understanding, so, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating world out there.
Yeah.
But is there a particular hope that you have for people that read your books, for them to walk away with? I mean, there's a lot of things people can take away. Obviously, everybody
Mhm.
interprets things differently, different life experiences, but is there a hope you have for people?
That's a great question. I don't think of all the things that I've been asked since the book came out, I don't think I've ever been asked that. So I appreciate that question. Sort of two things. One is a generic, like a general hope I hope for already, and then one is slightly more specific. So my first and primary hope whenever I write is I always want people to feel less alone because that's what I feel when I read a really good story that I relate to. And ironically, it's oftentimes I feel less alone, not because I'm reading a protagonist that's just like me. I feel less alone because I'm reading a protagonist that's maybe the opposite of me. And in many ways, not like me at all, but like psychologically, they're like me, right? Like when I read about the stuff happening to them and the way they're responding and their thought processes, I'm like, oh, like that's how universal these things are. Like this fictional character who's not Asian or who's not, female, who's not my age, without my life experiences, is thinking about these things the exact same way I do. Like all my thoughts and fears and concerns and anxieties are not special to me, and they are, in a sense, like very universal. So making people feel less alone, whether they're going through like similar mental health challenges with depression, anxiety, or whether they oftentimes find themselves like in between worlds, between like cultural clashes, or whether they're in America and they're like first generation, second generation, third generation beyond, and they still find things incomprehensible from their own culture or from American culture at large. Like whatever it is, whatever the angle is, I always want to make people feel less alone through a story. But then more specifically in this particular story, um, not that BTS or any other K-pop group really needs the help, but I also want like specifically the adult angle. Like I want like American adults in particular, especially ones who are not super familiar with K-pop, to like take it more seriously almost. It's sort of a weird way to say it, but like not just rely on their stereotypes about what this world looks like and have like a more sort of realistic idea of sort of what people go through and what this field entails. And then for people who are K-pop fans, like I'm continually surprised that like K-pop fans sometimes they follow all the drama behind the scenes and sometimes they don't. So like even like other fellow BTS like armies, like I'll like talk to them and sometimes I'll do podcasts with them and I'll reference something like a very specific drama that happened in the K-pop world and they have like no idea and I'm like, how do you not know this? This is so compelling. So like if you actually do follow K-pop, like the book I feel like is almost like a series of Easter eggs referring to real world events. So it's almost like a scavenger hunt where like you can test your own knowledge on whether you follow the industry because there's like things scattered throughout. So it's just like a fun exercise at that point if you actually do know what the world of K-pop entails. entails.
Oh, now I want to know if people are listening and they found the Easter eggs. I want to hear. Well, don't spoil, but
Yeah.
how people felt. Yeah, I love that. I do not, but now I'm like, ooh, I need to go over. I need to go immerse myself. But I do giggle because my old work bestie did pull us in one time. She was like, "Oh my gosh, you have to see this like video. They dance so amazing." And it's just like it is a very different world, and
Mhm.
we can share with our friends.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it was fun for me because throughout this book, I could almost hear your voice kind of like teaching me about psychology, but
Mhm.
also kind of immersing me in the experience and like,
Mhm.
because there's explanations, right, of different, I don't know if theories is the right word,
Yeah.
but there's kind of like this blending of your teaching and your writing. And
Mhm.
so I was like, oh, I'm coming into the world of Christine. And so that
Yeah.
was kind of a fun thing to discover. But what were like some of the hardest parts and what are some of the unexpected joys you found in your journey? It's been a year-ish
Mhm.
since it came out, right? April of last year. So what was the hardest part and then some joys?
Um, that's a great question too. Like perhaps the hardest part, the part I guess I never really thought about until the book came out is sort of the back end. And this is not, I think this is more just the state of the world we live in rather than like anybody particular like doing this to me or anything. I think the part I didn't foresee is like the idea that authors have to sort of be involved in publicity and marketing. Like that's not, I just never thought about it. It just never occurred to me. I guess while I was writing and as a reader, it never occurred to me like how the sausage gets made, like how a book comes to my attention. I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, there's these books in the world. I want to read some of them. Right. But like the sort of the long trail for like how a book came out into the world and then eventually permeated my specific attention span, like I just never thought about. And now as a writer, obviously I don't know if I have to think about these things, but like that comes to my attention more because that's obviously in the backdrop of like what authors do, especially now. Maybe not like decades ago, but now I think most authors have to do this stuff for their books. So I think I don't, and that's been fun too because I love like going to book festivals and like doing stuff like Comic Con and getting to reconnect with you. I like podcasts and stuff. I love like all that is fun for me. I don't feel any pressure doing it. It's all like just icing on the cake. But now I just feel personally responsible for part of that, and I did not sort of foresee that before, and I don't like, I'm not like, I'm on social media, but I wouldn't say I'm good at it. Like I like before I became an author, I posted on Instagram like once a year. so so now I'm like, okay, I gotta post more regularly. And like then once you start doing it, you're like, oh, like you feel you're just, it's always on the back of your head now. You're like, oh, that's back then. Like I should post about this. I should like show people this. And that I think was like a challenge because I'm not naturally like, I feel I like, especially as a psychologist, I have very mixed feelings about how much time people spend on social media, myself included. Like I love it, but I also think it's an extreme psychological liability. So I'm always like very mixed feelings and very ambivalent. So that's
The
probably
pressure
the
is real.
most challenging thing that I did not foresee coming.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been all bad either because like it's also fun to post and to engage with people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh no, the pressure is real. I mean, I I think when I started like my YouTube and my whatever
Mhm.
journey, I did not expect to be doing I was just like, "Oh, I'm just going to post into the world and whoever watches it. It's fine." And then
Mhm.
now it's kind of become oh, if you have to or if you want people to watch it, you got to do all these other things and the pressure is real and it's
Yes.
it's not fun anymore or whatever it is. So, got to strike that balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't think anyone knows where the line is. Like, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. When you draw a line between like your real life versus like your online presence,
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, and I think especially as I'm writing stuff about my own life, right? Or showing stuff about my own life and
Mhm.
like how much do we bring our kids into like the social media posting and stuff? Now I've kind of
Mhm.
backed away a bit more of
Yeah.
where I'm posting my children. But it's all these, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. It's kind of
Yeah.
what you determine for yourself. And social media is a whole different beast.
Yeah, my husband makes fun of me because he always says, he was like, if you look on your socials, you have no idea you're married. Or like, or that like, I don't know. They're like, I think people have some idea I have kids, like, but you're right. Like, they're not in most of my posts, especially since a lot of my posts are just like author stuff. So my husband like makes fun of me, and he thinks, I don't know how seriously he takes this, but he'll say stuff that suggests like half jokingly, like, you're just doing this on purpose so you look like a single person. And his whole separate life is like a single person online. I'm like, okay, maybe subconsciously, I want to like have a separate life just all by myself. But also, I'm like, half the time, I'm like, when I take a picture and you're in that photo, I don't know if you like the way you look in that photo or how you're being represented, or like, and like him, I could ask. My children, I wouldn't be inclined to really like discuss like, hey, do you like the way you look in this photo? Like, I don't want them to be self-conscious about that. So I'm always like hesitant. Like, I'll still post, like my children in particular, like they just make their way into my photos whether I want to or not. So like some like, especially when we travel or when we do events, like if they're in the background, like, or if they're next to me, like they're just gonna make it in. And I haven't, like, until recently, I haven't really thought that hard about like, oh, will they have a problem with this when they get older? Well, I have to delete some of the photos where they're like, Mom, I can't believe you posted that photo of me. um but yeah, like this whole idea, like if you are part of a family and then your stuff is their stuff and they start making it into it, like, do you run every single post by them? Like, what do you pretend you're single? Like, what do you do?
So my husband is very anti like social media, and so he does not want to be posted. He, like he's fine me referring to him or whatnot, saying my husband, blah blah blah, right? But he's made it very clear, and he doesn't like. I do food Instagram stuff, and he's like, "Oh, you're taking pictures of food again." Like he's,
Yeah.
so I know where the line is with him. The kids, I have asked, like in general,
Mhm.
do you want to be in it? You know that if you're in it, it is available for anybody to see, so we've had
Yeah.
these conversations.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just a whole different world from when we grew up, right? And the things that
Yeah, exactly.
are access. And I don't want them to be on screens all the time. I don't want them to get sucked in,
Yeah.
so I want to strike that balance for me so they see that modeled in me too.
That's the hard part too.
Yeah, yeah. So we were talking about marriage. I kind of wanted to go there in your book too, because there's a very interesting dynamic in the female main character's marriage, right?
Yeah.
And this might be spoiler alert. So if anybody, I don't know how spoilery we get, but always want to preface with spoiler
Yeah.
alert.
No, I think it's pretty safe. Like, it's
Yeah.
not gonna ruin the plot or anything,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So can we talk about your thoughts when you were exploring this dynamic between them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure how you would characterize the dynamic. I would characterize the dynamic as her husband is the opposite of jealous, like
Yeah.
almost to a point of like, I don't think it's actually pathological, but it feels almost pathological how not jealous he is. Like, to the point where he seems to like relish the possibility of like her being interested in like other people, especially this like K-pop star who enters their lives. And so it's a very, I agree, it's like a very sort of strange dynamic. You don't see that a lot in.
So I'm like, is it an open relationship? Not really, because
Yeah,
so,
and it doesn't seem to be like explicitly open either. There
yeah.
just seems to be this like undercurrent of like you do you, and if you want to go there, like go there. Like, and it almost seems like he does not care if she goes there. So the motivation for writing that, and why I think that is such an interesting ground to situate a story, so it's like both from like anecdotally from my personal experience, like watching people around me and like my own relationships, but also like from a psychological stance. So I'll say like anecdotally, having been married for a while and having like, I would say most of my friends are married too at this point in my life. Like, I know quite a few women whose husbands are like
Mm.
super jealous and like very controlling. Obviously, they know who they are. So I'm like, I hope, I don't think any of my friends who might be hearing this would be like, oh my god, she said they.
We don't know who your friends are. It's okay.
Everyone knows. Like it's
If you
no. I
feel
don't
called
think
out,
it's
then
Yeah, like,
you know
I don't
who
think
you
it's a
are.
secret. And here's the thing I noticed about women with super controlling husbands and jealous husbands. I'm just like, it never works. If anything, it tends to backfire because when I'm hearing about their husband's jealousy, it's usually in the context of like, don't tell my husband I'm doing this, or don't say in front of my kids that I'm doing that, because then they'll tell my husband. And I'm like, and I've seen this enough times where I'm like, all this seems to do, and I think my own husband puts it nicely because he's not jealous either, like at all. He was like, jealousy is the most stupid control mechanism because it never works, right? Because there's no way you can control what your spouse or your significant other does really in their free time. Like, however much you think you're controlling the situation, your actual, and that's actually like based on studies. Like, studies show illusion of control is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And in American culture in particular, it's way prevalent. Everyone thinks they have way more control of the situation than they actually do. So I'm like, when I think about jealousy, I think like anecdotally, I just think about that side, that like all these people trying to tightly control their loved ones because they're afraid that they're gonna like, I don't know, step out in their marriage or like break up their family or, do something else to violate their trust. I'm like, you don't actually, nothing you do will actually stop that from happening. You know that, right? Like if your spouse wanted to step out on you, they're going to find a way to do it one way or another. And you being controlling, if anything, is just going to make them hide more stuff from you. So that ultimately, if they ever do cross that line, it'll almost be easier for them to hide it because they're used to hiding other stuff from you all along because you're so controlling, right? So A, anecdotally, I don't think it works. But B, just from like my psychologist, and I'm like, there's this classic study that I talk about in intro psych. It's like decades old, but I think it still applies. It's one of the few things that like is ageless because I think it applies. That shows that here's the thing with when the study is really, I don't want to say bad, but the study is done such in a way that I don't think you can get away with it in the modern era of like consent and Me Too. I don't think you can get away with the study anymore. But like decades ago, they did a study where they just had like randos approach randos on college campuses and ask them like two questions: will you go on a date with me, or will you like come home and sleep with me? And obviously, 0% of the women said yes, but a good percentage of the men said. Sorry, 0% of the women said yes, but a good percentage of the men did. Right? So not rocket science. Everyone knows this. Surprising, shocked absolutely no one. But then the follow-up to this was they did subsequent studies where they introduced strangers, and these are all like heterosexual people in the lab, and then they kept on asking them this question, like, are you interested in sleeping with this other person? And they did this over time, over like months and years, and they found that over time, women's likelihood of saying yes increased, right? Men's were already high to begin with, but the thing that no one saw coming and that my students get upset by every semester is if you follow the line, for women, it's a straight line up, where the longer you know someone, the more likely you are to say yes to like ultimately sleeping with them. But for men, it goes up a little. I mean, the men, they're already high, but like it goes up a little bit, but then it drops. Like after a certain number of years, it goes down. And the girls in my class always go like, why does that drop at that? Like, why does that drop? Like, what's going on there? They're like concerned. They're like, wait, after year 3, it drops? After year 4, like, what is up with the drop? And I mean, I think the drop, like, I think the one of the gender differences is that, like, I think there is some truth to that drop, right? That over time, and I'm like, if we take that drop seriously, and I don't think that's the only study in the world that shows that like it's like the aspect of novelty might be a little stronger of a pull for men than for women, then that means like we're doomed in like marriages and monogamy is doomed, right? Because there's a drop for one gender more than a drop for the other one. So I'm like, if that's the truth that we have to reckon with, if that's what we're built in a certain way to do, then let's not pretend that we don't all struggle or deal with that, right? Like, and I think in the book, the lack of jealousy is sort of just one particular couple's way of like dealing with this fact that yes, you will constantly have the real or imagined opportunity to be with other people. And if you are married for long periods of time, how do you grapple with it? How do you deal with it? Like, I don't think there is a clear solution. And the book sort of explores one couple sort of unconventional way of dealing with that reality.
That story just reminded me of, you know how some people, oh, I don't know some people, but it's like, oh, what celebrity is your one pass? Or like,
Oh, yeah,
if you ever.
yes, exactly. I mean, whenever people say that, I always wonder like how serious they are. Like, I
Yeah.
know it's a fun thought exercise, but
Yeah.
like push games, like realistically, obviously, it would never happen.
Yeah.
But like, if it actually did happen, would people actually be okay with the whole pass? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a fascinating thought.
Yes, it's a fun thought exercise.
Yes, yes. So some authors have soundtracks, right? As they're writing, or they're just like really into music, and it's just how they get in moods of certain chapters that they're writing. This
Mhm.
one is about a band and BTS and K-pop and stuff. Did you have a soundtrack as you were writing, or were there like chapters and songs that kind of went in your head?
Yeah, like I think BTS was definitely probably the soundtrack that inspired just about everything in the novel. There's when the book first came out, we actually made a Spotify playlist for the
Oh,
band. Like my essentially my publishing house was like, "Hey, you put together a Spotify playlist of all the songs you listen to, like while writing it." So BTS was most of them is definitely BTS. There's a few other like um, K-pop bands on there as well. There's few like non-K-pop bands like Taylor Swift is on there because I think she's ultimately a great writer as well. If you look at her like lyricism, like her stories are like her songs sound like stories too, like almost an entire novel in themselves. Um, and going back to BTS a little bit, I think the songs that resonate with me the most when writing stories is their early stuff in Korean. So if you're familiar with their work, like a lot of their more recent stuff, not so much with the singles that they've done since they've started military service. It's been I think a mixed bag. But like if you look at their like entire discography as a band, a lot of the early stuff was just exclusively in Korean. Um, really, I think, tell a story much more elegantly than maybe some of their more recent stuff that are exclusively in English. Like the English stuff is much more poppy and like catchy and I think accessible for an American audience, but their Korean stuff, if you look at the lyrics, like really do a good job in telling like a very poignant story. So it's a lot of like early BTS, like their early albums that in particular inspired a lot of the writing during the process.
do you already have other ideas of stories that you want to write? And like, do you keep a notebook where you just like write all your ideas, or what is your writing process, especially as a working mom, right? Like you have to juggle all these other things. So what does
Yeah,
that
so
look
I'm always thinking about the next project. I'm frequently working on multiple. So the two things I'm obsessed about recently that I'm also working on novels on. One has to do with like I don't know if you follow this. I feel like you're definitely adjacent to it, but not like in this field
like?
yourself. So the trad wife phenomenon on
Mhm.
TikTok slash Instagram. Like I know your angle is more like wellness and wholeness and like so I feel like you and the trad wife things are probably like neighbors. But like the trad like the trad wives I think is super fascinating too for like similar reasons. Like from a personal angle, like as a mother with kids and a husband, like I feel like I know what they're referring to, but I don't live my life like that. Like I do not spend more than 30 minutes on dinner. So the whole phenomenon of like spending hours on making things from scratch is very interesting to me, but also like psychologically and sociologically, the fact that this throwback to a previous gender era is so popular now in this uber modern, I would say relatively like progressive universe that I inhabit is also super interesting. So I have like a whole novel in the works on that and totally sidebar, but I don't know if you follow like Luigi Mangione, the shooting, the Celtics CEO shooting.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a whole. I'm like, I was when that shooting happened. I was briefly obsessed. And every time I get obsessed about something, I just start writing a novel
Mm.
about it. And so, yeah, I'm working on that too. We'll see. That one is definitely like very early on in the works. So we'll see where it goes. Maybe if the trial happens anytime soon, I'll have much more novel writing to be inspired by.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I know people have talked about like, oh, they have, these notebooks, people do it on their phones. Like it's just a fascinating, like everybody does it differently and you capture your thoughts as you're going, right?
Yeah.
So I like to do quick fire questions if you're up for it.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
see, four quick fire questions to wrap us up. So the first one is, what are you reading right now? And if you're like me, there might be multiple things that you're reading on multiple formats, but what are you reading right now?
So two things I was reading last night. Um, one is Leaving Las Vegas which apparently is a movie that came out before I spoke English, I think. Because like my husband like played it in bed the other day, and I was like, "What is this?" And he was like, "You've never seen Leaving Las Vegas? It won an Oscar. It made single handedly make Nicolas Cage a household name." I was like, "I didn't speak English when this movie came out. I have no idea what you're talking about." So he forced me to. Oh, he didn't force me. He was like, "You should really watch it." So I watched it. I was devastated. It's the most depressing movie I've ever seen. But then I was like, I want to know why this movie won an Oscar. Like, I personally did not enjoy the movie, but I'm like, if it won an Oscar, I'm like, maybe I'm missing something. So I went and looked up the book, and it's a very sad story behind the book because the writer like killed himself 2 days after he sold the rights to the book to this movie, which became so hugely successful. But all that made me just want to read the book more because I'm like, this is the most depressing series of stories I've ever heard in my entire life. So I'm reading Leaving Las Vegas, the book right now. And the book I think is might actually be better than the movie. So for people who remember,
Oftentimes they are.
yeah, the book might be even like it's darker, but I think it's actually better. Um, and then this is a total nerd thing. Like I like to read screenplays, sometimes in place
Oh,
of a movie or sometimes in addition to the movie.
yeah.
So I don't know if you remember the movie a few years ago, Promising Young Woman. I think it also won a bunch of awards. It's like this female revenge fantasy that's also pretty dark. Um, I watched the movie, love the movie. Like Carrie Mulligan is in the movie. Bo Burnham is also in the movie. But then I liked the movie so much, I went back and I'm starting to read the screenplay just for fun. And the screenplay is Chef's Kiss, really good. So those are the two things I'm reading.
Also, this is funny because I read my Oxford Year by Julia Whalen, reread
Mhm,
it because there was like a book club thing that was happening.
mhm.
But she was talking about how it was actually a screenplay and they asked to write the book. So it was kind of like the
No
reverse. And
way.
it's now coming out. Yeah, I think or actually it's August, right? So it came out, yeah, on Netflix, but
Wow.
apparently that's how it became. So she was emphasizing if you go watch it, like just know that because people compare the book and the movie, obviously,
Yeah.
right? And she
Uh-huh.
said it's actually the reverse, like the book is the adaptation. So
Wow.
it's fascinating. Yeah, now I have to go watch it and see what that looked like. But
I didn't even know that was possible, but that's super cool. I'm very intrigued now. Okay.
yeah,
I'll definitely have to
yeah,
do both and do a comparison, see how that
yeah,
stacks up.
yeah,
No, I love that.
yeah. Anyhow, okay, so that was question one. Number two, what is an underrated book that you would recommend to others?
Oh gosh, there's so many. What do I think? Whenever I see people who love like K dramas or K-pop or like because Korean culture is like all the rage these days. Um, I tell them to read Eri Shin. Her name is Eri,
Hmm.
and Shin like Shin. So it's sort of
Hmm.
a funny spelling, but her book I think gives the most real, and it's called Spring on the Peninsula.
Spring on the
So her
Peninsula.
book probably gives the most unfiltered, realistic look of modern day Korea, like lived through the lens of young-ish people,
Mhm.
like people probably in their 20s and 30s, um, that I've read to date. And I think anyone who loves Korean culture should read that book, Spring on the Peninsula, because I think K-pop and K-dramas, as much as I love both, is a I extremely idealized view of that society. And I think Spring on the Peninsula gives a much more raw, unfiltered view of what it actually looks like on the ground on a day-to-day basis. So that's probably the most underrated one. I haven't seen a huge amount of press because it's like Astra House. I think is might be an indie publishing house. So indie books in general don't get as much press. So I think they're generally underrated, like literary fiction in general. And Spring on the Peninsula definitely lit fic, but really good, very compelling. Um, like it's super, really transportive if you're ever curious what it's like to live as a 20 something or 30 something in Seoul today.
Ooh, okay. My TBR list is super long, but I'm adding it.
Good.
Kidding.
Please do.
So, speaking of Korea and travel, I know you traveled a lot with your kids too. So, where is the top spot you'd recommend to others and why?
Oh, great question. Um, so I have my answer and then I have my kids' answer. So, like, especially having gone to, so most of our travels, I've taken my kid to, at this point, like, I think 23 countries, my older child. Uh, and most of them have been in Europe, like throughout Europe, which I really like going to because I love that you could essentially fly into any country in Europe and then just take really budget friendly transportation to any other country because it's like so accessible. So you can take trains or like really cheap, like low budget, like budget airlines or like ferries, whatever. So I love, like, historically, I've loved taking my kids to Europe. It's tons of fun. But I find that my children like going to Asia more. So
Mhm.
like they love going to Japan, obviously, which you obviously have gone to with your kids a lot, and so you probably and a lot of your content talks about like that too. Um, but uh, and I hate to bring up Korea again, but like Korea seems like having gone to like China, Japan, Korea, and more recently like Southeast Asia, like Korea seems like the best sort of in between spot to go. Like it's not quite as pricey as Japan, like it's way more affordable than Japan, but it has all the fun stuff that you would expect from China, Japan, and Korea, like East Asian countries, like the historical, the like the visuals, the vibes, like the old school like Asian, like the pictures you sort of expect to see. You can get those in Korea. It has a lot of like great food. So not only does it have Korean food, but it's pretty international. Like we've gotten pretty good sushi in Korea. Like we've even gotten like a decent Italian food in Korea, which like you don't expect. Um, so I would say like Korea for like just maximum fun for the most budget friendly. I would probably say Korea because Korea is also way more budget friendly than most Western European countries. Like way more expensive. So like if you want sort of the middle ground that hits like all the spots without being too over the top expensive, I would say like Korea is probably the best middle ground.
I had friends that have gone for like plastic surgery, not like huge plastic surgery
Yeah, yeah.
things.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just like, what? You did that there, like on a trip? But it's amazing what they
Oh,
can do.
yes, and you could do an overall like mommy makeover in Korea. Like I didn't do that the
Yes.
first time I went because I was trying to resist. Although every my friend is like, "What procedure are you getting done?" I'm like, "Excuse me, I'm not getting anything done."
What are you trying to say?
Yeah, but the second time I finally gave in and got like one of those like not what do you call it, radio frequency procedures
Oh,
where they like
uh-huh.
blast your face with like radio frequency waves. And I was like, and then I came back to America and I just looked up how much it would have cost here, and
Oh,
I'm like, oh my god, it was such a steal in Korea.
yeah. No, like one friend was saying this might become like an annual or like a few
An
years
annual
thing where I
trip.
take my mom and we go and do this thing and then we just come back, because it's
That's
so much
true.
cheaper.
Because I
It's
mean,
even more
honestly,
trip.
even with airfare, it almost balances
Yes.
out, and you get like a vacation. So
Yeah.
I'm
And their
down.
food is good. Yeah, I was just like, wow, this is a thing. I had no idea. She opened up my eyes to a whole different world of what people do.
Yeah, and I think they're honestly better at it because like
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, like where I live in LA, sometimes I'll walk around, like even at Trader Joe's or the grocery store, and I'll see a woman who's clearly had stuff done. And I'm like, oh, you clearly had stuff done. Like it's so obvious. In Korea, even walking around Gangnam, where like every single building is a plastic surgery clinic, like short of like the women where like their entire face is bandaged, where I'm like, okay, clearly you got like good jaw cut. Like most of the time, like unless their face wasn't bandaged, I have never my many like the multiple times I've gone to Korea, I've never been walking down the street and looked at an extremely like put together woman and thought like, oh, you got work done. Like everything they do is so subtle, like it's indetectable. Which I was like, I don't know, American plastic surgery should take some notes. Like they're so good at it too.
But it's also so common, right? So then like
Yes.
there's so many people that do it and you have to be good if yeah, it's
Yeah, the
amazing. I
standard
was
is
just
way higher because like everyone does it, but no one wants to be obvious that they've done it.
yes. Yes. Yes.
So
Oh, so many
yeah.
fascinating things. All right, last question is since I also love food, I have to ask a food question. What is your favorite comfort food?
Oh gosh. So I'm like probably abnormally addicted to sugar. So I would probably say like anything with chocolate in it um is probably my comfort food. Like we literally eat dessert every day in my house. So every day it's either like cookies or brownies or like some other treat. So like if I'm being like realistic, I would say like the favorite comfort food is probably like chocolate chip cookies or something
Mhm.
like that. Like something with chocolate in them that's chewy. Like chewy is my favorite texture. Um Recently, since I know that sugar addiction is not good for you, and like everyone reminds me of this, And like even my socials are constantly reminding me, like, oh, healthy desserts. I'm like, this guy told me something. I should maybe swap out chocolate chip cookies with something healthier. My favorite healthy dessert that I've found that's like come close to like a Reese's Pieces peanut butter bar or like a chocolate chip cookie is, I don't know if you've made these. I haven't done a deep dive through all your content to see if you've made this in particular, but like you know those like dates that like I've seen this on socials a lot, like dates stuffed with like almond butter or some other
Yeah.
nut butter and then like covered in chocolate.
Yeah.
I have a hard time convincing the other members of my household that they taste exactly like Reese's peanut butter cups, but I've convinced myself that they taste exactly like Reese's peanut butter cups. So that's probably like my favorite recently developed healthy version.
I've heard it's like a Twix bar,
Yes,
right?
because
Because
it's
the
chewy,
chewy and the
nutty. It's a
yeah,
little caramelly, and definitely
yeah,
the chocolate on top.
yeah. I mean, dates on its own are really good too. So I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
So how can people connect with you further when they're like, I want to know more. What's going on with Christine?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm on all the socials. I'm probably on Instagram the most consistently. And my Instagram handle is too hard to spell, so if you just look at my name, you can probably find
We'll
it.
add the links. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then I mean, I'm on TikTok a little bit, and X very sparingly. So, and then like I obviously have a website, which is just my like full name, um, .com. So yeah, I post pretty consistently like all the stuff that I do on those things.
Perfect. Anything else you want to leave with our audience before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in the last 45 minutes or so. So this
Yeah.
was really fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Christine. It was such a pleasure like catching up. This was like my girl time with you. Thank you for sharing. And everybody will have the links. So go check out her book, all her info, and all the stuff to come.
Okay. Thank you so much.